The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those knuckleheads of liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We're coming at you on October 10th, 2022, nearly 2 years into the Biden administration, where every day is just another step into the abyss, it seems like. But hopefully we have an exciting show for you to take your mind off that today. So we have a special guest on our panel as well. So let me introduce you to our panel. In our lower left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our upper left-hand corner today, we have Ken Quinn of USTermLimits.com. And so you can go check out more stuff from his organization on why term limits are a good idea. And he's going to join us in discussing some topics today. And my name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host. The election is right around the corner. We have a chance to maybe make some kind of an impact in the direction things are going. It seems like a good time to find out a little bit about what's on the minds of voters nowadays. So Monmouth University just put out a polling results, I guess, on some of what they're seeing. And so let me bring that up, James. Maybe you could bring that up. And so what they're showing is that at least they also share our opinion that, most of the people they interviewed, that Biden is, I guess, not ideal, to say the least.
He's a walking disaster.
Yes. I don't know that they used that in the poll. Unfortunately, I think they should have. I don't think they would have been going out on a limb. But anyways, as far as congressional party preference, it seems to be going back and forth right now, trending toward Republicans. For the congressional voting. And as far as the topics that seem to be of most people's top concerns, inflation appears to be number one. So apparently there still is some sanity in society. I mean, you wouldn't know that this was what's on people's minds watching some of the crazy stuff that people seem to be, navel gazing on. But crime is also a biggie. Elections and voting and jobs and employment. Down near the bottom is student loan debt, which apparently is the focus of Biden. The COVID pandemic, also big focus of Biden, and climate change. So these are, kind of a snapshot of what voters are interested in. So given all this, what are you guys thinking going into this election? Are we going to get some positive changes? Does it look bad? I don't know. Certainly, we have a tough time selling any libertarian candidates, but hopefully, at least if some Republicans can get in, at least they can maybe steer us away from the iceberg a little bit. What do you guys think?
Well, it would be very good if we can get some Republicans in. However, I am not sure how much changes we're going to get, because the modern day Republican Party, when I say the modern day Republican Party, that in the Republican Party of the last 50 years, have come just a little smaller, a little less spending party, a little less spending than the Democrats. They're almost like the two parties have merged into this monster that is working on taking away our rights and our liberties, even though I would still prefer the Republicans to be in there, preferably somebody more liberty-minded than what we have. But there are some real pressing issues in front of us that are not being addressed. I mean, and the poll shows it. I mean, you talk about inflation and the economy in general. You talk about crime. You talk about election integrity. I mean, these are big issues that are facing voters right now. And I hope they will vote accordingly. And that should favor the Republicans. But the whole point about it is that too many liberty-minded voters have been disappointed when the Republicans get in power. I mean, I would prefer them to be in power if we can't get a more liberty-minded person there, but I would prefer them to be in power. But the what they have become is not something that I'm very pleased about.
Hey, Jason, I'll chime in on here. I find it interesting that inflation is at 82%. And in a Scott Rasmussen poll back in October, that's the same level of support the American people want for term limits. And
Wow.
yeah, and that's across party lines. And listen, I've been involved in politics now long enough to realize I don't expect any change to come, no matter how the elections go. Because as long as we allow the incumbent party to remain in place, it's going to be same old, same old. And so that's why I'm working on the term limits for Congress issue. We've got to get new people, and it'd be a great opportunity for people outside of the two parties to win some seats, because I think open seat elections gives third party candidates a much greater chance of getting to Washington, D.C. And so that's the effort that I'm working on.
You know, it will be surely be great if the power of incumbency can become one of the top issues for the voters. It is not right now. I mean, they talk in general about elections and voting, but the power of the incumbency is a real problem. It really is a problem. It is corrupting the very soul of our nation. And this is something that we definitely have to work on if we are to save our constitutional republic.
I agree, Leon, 100%.
And if I may bring up the rear, I am too cynical to think there's going to be much change after this next election. That's just me. So I'm just a little too pessimistic when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I think all in all, we're not necessarily going in a good direction, but there's hope on the horizon, so to speak, that pops up once in a while.
I mean, I'm not.
No specifics.
Yeah, I know. I understand that, Tim. I am not. I will not yet give up on our republic. Okay, and I think when there are people like Ken working on term limits, and if one day we can really get this thing about term limits on legislation, also, I think there's still hope to refresh our republic. The continuous process of refreshing our republic and renewing our republic will continue. I think that would be a net positive for the country.
Yeah, I would chime in. Don't give up hope. Our country has been through a lot worse in our history. And as long as we have concerned American people, which we do, we can affect the change needed. It's just going to take a lot of effort and support from the American people. And we've got to get to a tipping point where enough is enough. And I see that. I see us approaching that point in time where an issue like term limits for Congress ultimately will get done, and then introduce other reforms down the road as needed. So keep the faith.
Yeah, we go.
Okay.
There we go.
That's a good segue, because, one of the things we've seen, with a lot of these guys who go into Congress is they tend to come out a lot richer when they're done. And so it tends to be a lucrative gig. And, we have this little meme that I found online that seems to capture it pretty well. It shows Ben Kenobi and Luke Skywalker giving that quote about the what was it, the Hoth Isley space sport or whatever it was. They were getting ready to go into the cantina, and you'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. And of course, they're looking out at DC.
Hey, Jason, we've got a saying at U.S. term limits. You hear all the time, well, elections are term limits. Well, what we like to say is, we have term limits. It's called death, dementia, and indictment.
You would hope, but dementia doesn't seem to be one of them anymore.
Yeah, dementia doesn't work.
Getting
dated.
Yes, when we look at our president, I mean, I'm not sure that dementia issue works anymore, really and truly. I mean, and sometimes even the vice president, I think, is following the same course, if you want the honest truth.
We laugh, but it's so true, isn't it? Yeah, I know.
Well, the crazy thing though is, I mean, I used to like the term Milton Friedman said, you can tell what people really want by how they vote with their feet. Well, I think you can kind of tell how corrupt Congress in the DC is by how rich everybody is when they leave, when they're supposed to be serving the people, right? And so, this was an article from GoBankingRates.com, and so they talk a little bit about some of the money that these guys have made, and they talk about Joe Biden, and he's apparently worth $9 million. I guess that's whatever's above board, because we've certainly heard a lot of other things recently about laptops and his son getting all these jobs in places in other countries.
and who's holding a little share for the big guy, that kind of stuff.
Exactly, bagman for the big guy. That'd be a good memoir for Hunter Biden. But accordingly, he's worth $9 million, and judging by his mental acuity and I guess just the way he seems to, as Obama said, if there's a way to screw it up, Joe Biden's going to find it or something. That was his old boss, right, who literally said that. And yet somehow he's people want to pay him a bunch of money in speaking fees. I mean, it said that they paid this guy an average of $126,000 to go speak. And I mean, if it wasn't for comedy, what the heck were they paying for? I just can't even imagine it. But apparently somebody thought he'd make a good professor, so $775,000 he made in the Ivy League for that. But he's not the only one. There's a lot of these guys. It sounds like George Bush here. I guess he has a network of 40 million. Not quite sure how he made some of that, although I guess his family had some money when he came in.
No, the Bushes made their money in oil, so at least I'll have to give him that one.
Okay. Bill Clinton, $80 million. Certainly he wasn't worth $80 million when he started politics.
True.
We know that. And of course, Obama, I believe, is worth $70 million. This one report says Al Gore's worth $300 million. $300 million. Yeah. I guess climate change is very lucrative.
Very lucrative. Even though a little bit of Gore's money did come. I mean, his father was also wealthy, who was also a senator. So I don't know. Maybe some of it maybe most of it did come from the government. I guess I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Well, 70 million too from Barack Obama, and of course he gets paid a lot for giving speeches as well. Although at least I can understand people at least wanting to hear him speak a little more than Biden. So I don't know. But anyways, you guys have any thoughts about all this? It sounds kind of a little bit creepy. These guys go in, they're not that rich, and they come out and they're filthy rich. So.
Well, Jason, I noticed that these are mostly presidents, but if you were to look at members of Congress, you'd see the exact same thing. And if you want to get filthy rich fast, running for Congress is probably one of the best ways of doing it if you don't have any principles. And this is what they're doing. They get down there, and I don't know if you ever saw the expose by 60 Minutes. But it's called Dialing for Dollars, I believe was the title of it. You can find it on YouTube. They spend 70% of their time raising money for their campaign and their reelection and for the party. And the ones who raise the most money, they have two buildings. Each party has a building off site, so it's legal. It's a boiler room. They have a script, and they post the numbers outside so everyone can see. And it's called Paying Your Dues. And the ones that raise the most money, they get the best chairmanships on the committees, and those are highly valued positions because that's where they make their real money. That's where they get inside information on what projects are coming down the pike, and they could help basically determine their financial future by which ones they allow. They let family members know, hey, an airport's going to be built here, start buying up land. It's all done behind the scenes, and their salary is breadcrumbs compared to what they actually make at playing this game behind the scenes. It's pathetic. It really is pathetic. Not to mention the stock information that they receive ahead of time, where they make stock decisions.
Yes.
Even though back in, I think in 2010 they passed the Stock Act to prevent this. It's a joke. It's a complete joke. We see day after day that people still getting caught, and it's a mess. That's why we've got to limit these people and their power. Yeah,
Well,
term limits.
Ken, real quick on that, where did you say that you could go to find out more information on that particular item? It sounded like it's certainly compelling and worth looking into.
Yeah, go to YouTube and just type in 60 minutes dialing for dollars, and there's Nora O'Donnell did an expose on that. You'll find it. It's really fascinating, and this she did a few exposés on Congress and the corruption that were very, very good. Talking about the committee levels and how what the lobbying firms do is it's called the golden parachute, where in order to get legislation passed to benefit their organization, their company, they promise to the members of the committee, hey, when you're done Congress, come work for us. So they get a nice cushy position after they pass their bill to leave Congress and become a lobbyist. It's such a scam.
You know, it is, and it is indeed. You know, I have to agree, it is a scam. But you know, petitioning your government is part of our constitution.
Absolutely, First Amendment.
But that have grown to such a scam, as you call it, to such a monster in terms of destroying our liberties and everything else. It makes you wonder where you could put limits on this activity. But I don't know if you can or you should, because I think we should always be free to petition our government, because we don't want the government to be isolated from the people. But right now, it's being isolated from the people, but it's just being isolated with a bunch of elites and special interests and the people who supposedly are elected to protect our interests. But they are not protecting our interests. We know that. Yeah, but there's a real problem with this lobbying, and I don't know how to fix it, because it's a constitutional mandate.
Yeah, sadly, these individuals they care more about their self-interest than the interest of the American people, and that's the problem we're seeing. And so, we just have to limit that power they have.
Well, sadly, it's concentrate power in government, and you're just going to have concentrated interests. So, I mean, you know, there's this fantasy people have that, well, we just need a lot of power in government to go after all those bad big guys. But in reality, the big guys just take over any power that we put in government. So, it's, you know, that's just sort of an age-old lesson. But, you know, getting back to the, you know, direction that you just had from going from the presidents to Congress, and maybe we could get an image up, James, for this, but certainly that's a big issue, right? I mean, these guys, not only are they getting all kinds of, you know, lobbying money and everything else from people, but these guys literally are engaging in stuff that really looks like insider trading if anybody else was to do it. I mean, they're literally working on a law. They have inside knowledge because they have discussions with these entities. Because, you know, a lot of times the way either a rule or a law is made is these lawmakers, they don't have the special knowledge about all these industries, so they have to have all these conversations with these industries. They get them sitting around tables, or they have one-on-one interviews, and you know, they wind up knowing a lot more about it than the general public does in a lot of cases about these industries. And then they're setting the rules. And then lo and behold, they're making stock picks, or having their or families make stock picks on all these things. So, you know, certainly this was an article in the New York Times where it talked about dozens of lawmakers. But you know, certainly the head honcho, Nancy Pelosi, you know, is just raking in, you know, tens of millions of dollars on these things. I mean, she's worth over $100 million, I'm pretty sure, on a lot of this stuff. So, and of course, her stock picking massively outperforms the market.
Jason, I wish somebody would create a congressional index fund that we could use as investors. Wouldn't that be great? You know, we got the S&P index funds. We need a congressional index fund so that we, the people, can be investing at the same time they do, because it would make tons of money.
Yes.
I mean, it's good. It's always great to pick on Nancy Pelosi. I really have no problem. But I just want to be clear. Both sides are doing this crap. Okay, honestly. All right. Seriously. During COVID, there was this a senator from Georgia. She lost her race in January, But she and her husband made a whole bunch of money from some COVID information that they had. She lied about it and then said, "Oh, well, we didn't have anything to do with it," and blah blah blah. You know the normal BS they give us. But both sides are doing this, and Pelosi and her husband have been profiting mightily from it. It is true, but there are some Republicans doing the same thing too.
Oh yeah, human nature.
Human nature, exactly. There we go. And this, in a sense, is when we talk about these things, when we talk about these things about what these people are doing, and they pass these so-called laws to limit their conduct. This is nothing but a very good example of why we need term limits on both legislation and on the people themselves, because the power of the incumbency is corrupting, and it's corrupting the soul of our land, it's corrupting the soul of our constitutional republic. We need term limits. We really do. We really need to limit the power of the incumbent. We really do.
Thank you, Leon. I couldn't say it better.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for thanking me.
Well, what's funny is that Nancy Pelosi has come under a lot of scrutiny recently. People have been asking her about should there be limits now on at least people being able to work in Congress and essentially bet on the stock market on these types of things. And so first she was against that. Then she seems to have supported a recent bill, it looks like, that was starting to be worked on, and then that mysteriously just sort of failed. That's, unless you guys have heard anything new on those efforts, that's the latest I've heard. So anyways, it just seems like, get the bums out of there as quick as possible seems to be about the only way to address this.
But even when, but you see, this is the thing that they do, Jason and Tim and Ken. Even when they do work on these bills and they do pass some legislation about the issue at hand, they pass these bills and they deliberately leave so many holes in it that you can drive a truck through it.
Yes.
Okay,
exactly.
that's what they do. So they'll come out and tell the public, "Oh, we have passed that stock act that will limit this and will limit that and will do better for us and blah blah blah." But when their lawyers started working it after the bill is passed, when the lawyers started working it, there are so many holes in those things you could drive 10 trucks through it. Sorry, I said one just now, but I meant 10. Okay, that's what's going on. Even it's even a scam in when they're passing these so-called laws to limit the conduct of some of our elected representatives. And this is a serious problem. This is why we need term limits, and this is why we need term limits both on the legislation and on the people who are passing the legislation. I really mean this.
Yeah, I'll add to that is the American people have got to wake up to the fact that Congress is not going to fix the problems they are creating. They
Right.
are the problem.
Right.
And that's why we're working, U.S. term limits is working on a term limit amendment for Congress, not so much through Congress, because I don't have a lot of faith they're going to do it to themselves. We want the states to exercise this power and authority that's given to them under Article 5, so the state legislatures can start affecting change at the federal level through this amending provision. And so
Yes.
we have got to wake up to federalism again. We've got to wake up to the power that the state legislatures were given by the framers to protect our security. If you read Federalist 85, Alexander Hamilton, in closing out the whole Federalist argument, he refers to the Article 5 Convention as the thing that will protect our safety and our liberty when Congress gets out of control. And so we've got to use this tool that they've given us. We've never used it before. And what are we waiting for? So that's what I'm focused on.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, as far as term limits go too, I mean, that seems like a way of addressing this beast that is just gotten out of control. But the biggest, thing for a liberty-minded person, I mean, if you really want to have more liberty, you need to shrink the size of government, keep it simple and transparent, because ultimately that's the only way that citizens can have any idea of what's happening with government. It's just way too complex. And of course, these guys who are in there, they're literally, I guess, sort of rigging the game in their for both them and their high roller friends. So it just
Yes. Yes.
and of course it's too complicated. It's like you mentioned, Leon, there's always loopholes. Well, of course, who knows where the loopholes are? The people who wrote it
Exactly.
and all their buddies,
Exactly.
they know where all those
Yes.
loopholes are. The rest of
Yes.
us don't.
Yes.
It's but as far as size of government growing, I think another area we see that in is lobbying as well. And maybe you could bring up the graphic again, James, on this. So Statista put together this um, this graphic of lobbying for the I think this is for the U.S. Congress. I don't think this is, or at least the federal government. I don't think this is related to state lobbying, because certainly we have issues like this in California as well.
Yes, we do.
Um,
We do.
but so essentially, you're going up. This is in the billions. So you got in 1998. This lobbying was about a $1.5 billion effort to now it's like about 3.7. So, I mean, it's more than doubled the amount of money that's spent lobbying. And at the same time, we can see that U.S. debt has also increased massively over that same time period, too. And a lot more than doubling as well. This is about 5 trillion here back in 1998. And then we're at 31 trillion today. So, I mean, the costs of all of this lobbying for different favors and benefits and this rigging of the games and everything else, there's a real cost to all of us. And
Jason, real quick on that point alone, I believe it was opensecrets.com that did a study on the return on investment for lobbying. For every dollar they spent, the return on investment was 2,200%.
wow.
That was the rate of return for firms on lobbying issues. It's unbelievable.
It seems like a game you can't afford not to be in if you're a big industry.
Well, private companies are spending this kind of money because they must be getting something for the money. Okay.
Yeah.
No private organization will spend the money if the returns was not very good, and I would say if it was not significant.
Yeah.
And this is what is going on. These people are spending all this money on these incumbents, and their returns are nice and wonderful for them. But this is where the problem is. This is where the problem lies. And we get back again. I mean, I can't get away from this term limits history. We get back to this thing. Is that unless we can do something about the power of incumbency, since lobbying is mandated in our constitution, we are stuck with it. Okay, we are stuck with it. So we must limit the power of the people who are passing legislation and limit the power of the legislation themselves by refreshing it every once in a while.
Yeah. Well, this also begs the question, like you said, there's certainly businesses are doing this. Well, which businesses? And that, brings up which industries are really involved in all this lobbying. And so this article from Investopedia talks about who the big industries are that have been doing it over this time period. This is the 1998 through 2021. So it kind of lines up well with the graphics that I was showing earlier. But pharmaceutical and healthcare products and, big surprise. I mean, we've had issues like Obamacare and now COVID up there. So, I mean, this is, a big deal. And of course, if they're spending money on this stuff, then maybe that's also impacting our liberty in terms of, hey, maybe everybody's going to get forced to get an injection, or you're going to have your choices for healthcare limited, things like that. Right. Insurance is another big industry as well that spends a lot lobbying. Electric utilities. We've seen that, and electronics manufacturing and equipment. So these are some of the bigger players that are listed in here. But where this really falls out in is we saw this in COVID, right? Yeah, Gavin Newsom, our governor of California, telling everybody else they had to mask up, how serious all this was, while at the same time he was whining and dining at a fancy restaurant when he was shutting down other restaurants, by the way, in different parts of the state, whining and dining at the French Laundry, just a high roller restaurant. And who was he there with? California Medical Association lobbyists. So, I mean, and if you go back to that other thing, who was the top lobbying group, right? Pharmaceuticals and healthcare products. So, I mean, this really shows you that there are consequences to our liberty of all of this lobbying and all of this money of this wretched hive of scum and villainy that happens in these legislative centers in the country. So, anyways, you guys have any thoughts? Other thoughts on this topic?
Kenny can go. Kenny can go.
It just, I hate to sound like a broken record, but we have so many problems, and I don't think the American people need to keep hearing about the problems. I'm trying to focus on the solution to it, and so it just demonstrates the fact that this all goes back to the nature of our humanity. Corruption. Everyone has a bent towards corruption when given a lot of power, and that's why we need a change of a structure, and that's where the amending provision the framers gave us was to address these issues. That's the whole purpose of Article 5. And it was like, when you see a problem, here's how you fix it. And our Constitution is a great document. When it's great when it's being utilized with the checks and balances. That's not what's happening today. The checks and balances that the framers gave us have been abdicated. And we got to start using those once again. And that's why I'm a strong advocate for this process, to have the states exercise this check against the federal government. And one of them is by limiting how long members can serve in Congress. And then if we get that done, we could see other great reforms introduced by the states to affect the change at the federal level. We've got to start doing this, folks.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, we're getting near the end of the show, and one of the things we like to end with is our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And so, in that sense, he's the perfect poster child for term limits because he's been there forever. That's President Joe Biden, and this is the attitude that these guys get if they're there long enough. Biden was recently in Florida there for to show up to comfort people, I guess, after the hurricane hit, and he was in Fort Myers talking with a Democrat mayor there, I guess Ray Murphy, and he was caught on a hot mic. And what he said during that hot mic is, "No one F's with a Biden." So, I mean, these guys sound like mobsters. And, I guess if you get to be there forever, maybe that's the takeaway here. You guys have any other thoughts on dear old Joe?
Well, I guess his demented mind makes him Superman. I guess that now no one will f with him or f with any Biden. Oh boy, who will f with Hunter? I mean, he's traveling the world and enriching himself, and even holding some for the big guy. So no one has f with a Biden. Of course not. Why would you think otherwise? Okay, these people are above the law. So how long ago now we have been investigating Hunter with that laptop that we know about, the laptop from hell? How long now? And is anybody doing anything about it? We only hear all these rumors and that kind of stuff and things like that. So of course nobody f with a Biden. Joe Biden could believe that because nobody f with them after all the corruption.
Yeah, just showing the images here of some of the corruption that the Bidens appear to be. I don't know why on earth they're paying Hunter Biden, who knew he was a great artist. Suddenly people are paying him, hundreds of thousands of dollars for his art, which, saw him like blowing paint through a straw or something.
Yes.
I'm not sure. Maybe it was just an accident when he was using a straw for something else and he spilled something.
and then we want to sell this art for what, $500,000 or something like that. Could you imagine that?
Hey, just remember, nobody F's with a Biden.
Nobody F's with a Biden. Nobody F's with a Biden.
Well, we're just about out of time. And Ken, since you've been a guest on our show, and we thank you for having or for being on the show, was there anything you wanted to leave the audience with at the end? Let me pull up your websites too, so people can see them.
Sure. Yeah. Well. If they could go to termlimits.com, and we'd really appreciate them signing our petition. That's how we inform people of the progress we're making in their states. We're trying to, like I said, I think I said earlier, we'll be introducing the Article 5 resolution in probably close to 30 states next year. We're trying to get this done at the state. We also have over 100 members of Congress right now who have signed our pledge. So we're trying to advance this both ways, whatever it takes to get term limits on Congress. U.S. term limits is working on it. So we really appreciate the support from the people. And if when the candidates are coming to their door, ask them where do they stand. And we have a candidate pledge. We're asking all candidates for state office and Congress to sign. And that's what I've been focused on for the past few months. And I will for the rest of this month. So we just got to get it done. Oh, and that's a YouTube channel I recently started. It's called All Things Article 5. And I would appreciate people subscribing to it. I'm using this platform to address a lot of the misinformation that's being spewed out there. In my first series, I'm refuting a gentleman by the name of Robert Brown, who's offered a $10,000 challenge to anyone that could produce one quote from any of the framers who believe they had the authority at the 1787 convention to propose the U.S. Constitution. I just can't believe he'd put that kind of money on something that's so simple to prove. And so I've already made my claim for the 10 grand. I want that bounty, and I'll be dropping another one hopefully today after I get done with your program today. So that's going to be a lot of fun. You guys should definitely subscribe. You're going to have see some good stuff coming out.
Indeed.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep our eye out for that, Ken. And thanks so much for joining us, everybody. And by the way, if you like this podcast, we recently interviewed Ken in more detail about what U.S. term limits does. So go check that podcast out as well. Again, thanks to everybody so much for joining us. And until the next one, stay free.
Yes,
Take care.
indeed.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.